So here's the thing. What you say no to says a lot more about you than what you say yes to. And here's what I mean by that. There were so many times where I turned down brand deals because it didn't align with the type of client I wanted.
We don't stop. All right. I said we don't stop. We don't stop. Outside, inside, we don't stop. Global, worldwide, we don't stop. From the bottom to the top, we don't stop. From the burbs to the block, we don't stop. Outside, inside, we don't stop. Global, worldwide, we don't stop. From the bottom to the top, we don't stop. From the burbs to the block, we don't stop.
Founder of Affluent, a lifestyle company with an emphasis on style, Jay Hines' mission is to provide a distinctive, tailored experience that presents you at your best. Joseph Hines says he helps high performers grow their style and their network. As a man elevates, so must his style, his brand, and network evolve. How you look and who you associate with should align with where you want to be in life. Success is not just a goal, but a state of mind. Therefore, you must look the part. Because as Joseph says, when it comes to style, a book is judged by its cover. Welcome to the 2023 Waymaker stage, Chicago native and lifestyle expert, Joseph Hines, who will show us how to be appropriately dressed for today's times.
Gentlemen, how are we feeling today? Good. Hopefully the itis is not catching up to you too bad, right? We had a lot of that good food, especially that chicken. I kind of felt it in my stomach a little bit. I had to get a couple laps in before I came on stage, man. But look, before we start, first question I want to ask you guys. Can we get the slide up? Okay, let's go back. Is perception economics, right? Really cool term. And the first question I want to ask you guys is, has anybody heard of this before? Has anybody heard of this? Okay, good, because I made it up. So if somebody did, I was going to have some IP issues, right? So this term, perception economics, right, it's really, really important term, and it's something that I personally coined myself. But before I kind of get into this term, what it means, right, how I was able to coin it, I think it's really important to kind of just brush through again who I am, right? So who am I? Like the video kind of stated again, my name is Joseph Hines. I've been in the luxury menswear space for over a decade now, which is crazy to think about. I've been able to sell millions of dollars in the luxury clothing space, and in the process, I've been able to meet some really cool people, right? Anywhere from C-suite executives, entertainers, athletes, etc. And just to kind of go through a few, right? This is a guy by the name of Little Duval. I don't know if you knew him. I've had a chance to actually dress him, right, for one of his New Year's Eve performances. Here's another guy by the name of Will Packer. I don't know if you've heard of him before. Yeah, had a chance to be able to dress him. Really cool guy. Another guy by the name of Arthur Blank, had a chance to help him and his family. That was a really, really cool experience. One of the most interesting clients I've ever done some work for, right? If you ever want to know if you're working with a billionaire, you'll know because they'll have somebody come in the room before they do, right? I'm like, is this Secret Service, right? Another guy I've been able to help, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Alex Kosa, very, very big influencer. Akeem Ali, right? Actually a personal friend. A lot of you guys might know him. He's an up-and-coming artist. Amazing talent, man. Definitely up-and-coming. Here's another guy. His name's Jose Estuniga, teaching men's fashion, if you're familiar with him. Jordan Peterson, another great guy I've been able to help, right? If you guys are familiar with him, definitely an intellectual. And last but not least, the OG himself, Cuttino Mobley, right? And I don't know if you guys are like me, but when I get that, I'm trying to look like that, right? But I'm going to be honest, right? As cool as all of that is, who cares? Who cares? And what I mean by that is, right, I've done a lot of these speeches, I do a lot of these talks, and what I found is what really allows for people to connect, what really allows for people to understand is not talking about the destination. It's talking about the journey. I don't know if we have any DC, Marvel fans in here, superhero guys. I'm a DC head myself, but what's so cool to watch about superheroes, right? When it comes to watching Superman movies, when it comes to watching Batman movies, what makes a superhero movie good isn't the superpower, right? It's the origin story. It's the origin story. Nobody cares that Batman has all these cool, technological gadgets, right? Because if you don't hear about his story, you're just thinking, man, this guy's a billionaire. Of course he has that, right? You don't care about Superman and all these amazing things he can do if you don't hear about his origin story, because there's a part of that story that humanizes the superhero. And it allows for you to see a part of yourself in them. So my next question for you guys, is it okay if I talk about my origin story? Is that okay? Guys, so look, I am the youngest of 5, right? Come from a single parent household. As you guys can see, I'm the baby in the middle there. Yeah, I used to be kind of chubby, right? And what's so interesting, especially about when it comes to menswear, is I never in a million years thought I was going to be in this space. Right? If you would have asked me at 10, 11-year-old if I was going to be in suiting or menswear, I would have said, you are crazy. Right? I was the opposite of the menswear guy. See, you got to think, I grew up in Atlanta. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the South at that time, but there was a group by the name of them Franchise Boys. Has anybody heard of that group? Right? Has anybody heard of D4L? Right? Snap and roll. So at that time, the way that I like to dress, I was like, Mom, look, if you're going to go to the store and get me a white tee, I need to have 4 X's on that, right? Like if it's not going to my knees, it's not the style, right? AI was around that time, so if I'm wearing shorts, I got to be at the ankles. I don't care how big they are. I need everything supersized. That was me. And I remember visibly getting upset with my mom because she's coming home with the large. I'm like, Mom, you're missing 4 more X's. Right? This isn't big enough. So, when I started my fashion journey, I was in what's called the shadow realm. Everyone say the shadow realm. Right? I was wearing my brother's old Sean John hand-me-downs. If any of you guys remember that, Sean John used to have the sets, right? Where they'd have like the tracksuit top with the tracksuit bottom or the denim with like the triple break. That was me. That was me. Right? As you can see, I was trying to do the AI shorts. I was still a little bit mad at my mom in this because they still weren't long enough, but this was me, right? You see, at that time in my life, what was very, very important to me was basketball. Because if you would have asked me at that age, you couldn't have told me that I was not going to be the next Kobe Bryant, that I wasn't going to be the next Dwayne Wade. See, I was obsessive. I was the type of guy that would go to the gym and not just shoot 1,000 shots. I was trying to make 1,000 shots. But something really interesting happened to me my junior year. Right? Something really, really interesting happened to me. I ended up breaking my arm twice in the same year, 3 months apart from each other. Both times were a double fracture. And the second time I broke my arm, I'll never forget, it was May, right? And I remember going up, I blocked my teammate's shot, I landed on my feet, extended again with my left arm, and my arm snapped and my bone literally came out of my skin. I literally remember all of my teammates yelling, running out the gym, and me going to the nurse's office, holding my arm by myself. And it was one of the first times in my life that I ever thought, man, what if the ball stops bouncing? Fast forward, of course, I ended up having to get surgery in this arm. And when I woke up from surgery, something was really, really interesting that about it is I looked at my left hand and I noticed I had no feeling at all in my left hand. So when I talked to the doctor about it, and I'm asking him like, Doc, look, I can't feel in my left hand. What's going on? He looks at me and says, son, I'm sorry, you have nerve damage. And if any of you guys have ever dealt with nerve damage, the doctor can never tell you if it's ever going to come back. So now I go into what's one of the most important years of my life in basketball, right, where I had a lot of D1 camps lined up. This was going to be the biggest AAU. If you guys are familiar with basketball, right, AAU is really huge. I had a lot of AAU tournaments lined up. I end up going into that senior season. Instead of having D1 looks, now they drop to D2, D3, NIA because I'm playing with one hand. Because mind you, I don't want to let my coach know because if I break my arm again, my mom is going to kill him, right? So I never forget, there was one time in particular, right, towards the end of the season, I had a block schedule. On my block schedule, I would always get in about an hour workout. I go to pick up the ball, and it was the first time that I ever picked up a basketball, and it felt like work. It felt like work. And I'm at this interesting crossroads now because now this is the first time in my life where I feel lost. I have this one thing that I've committed 16, 17 years of my life to, right? It's become my identity, and now I have no idea what I want to do next. All I know is that for whatever reason, I just didn't feel passionate about it. I knew that I didn't want to do it anymore. And by God's grace, I was taking a college visit, right, to a school by the name of Georgia Southern University, and I met a guy by the name of Adam Hazlett. He comes up to me while I'm with my mom, and he says, hey, man, look, we're having a program. It's called Pathways to Success. It's for incoming African-American males. We're only selecting 30 from this particular class. Would you be interested? Now, guys, you got to understand. I was not the SGA guy, right? I wasn't doing mock trial. I wasn't doing extracurricular activities. I was only doing basketball. But again, at that time, I had all this extra energy. I didn't know where to place it. So I said, man, you know what? I'm just going to apply, right? Week later, 2 weeks, 3 weeks go by, get an email, was accepted. And this was a very, very pivotal moment in my life because what happened at Pathways is we ended up coming to school about a week early and they placed us with mentors. And our mentors were guys who were getting their master's degree, right, their doctoral degree, or was their 4th year on campus. And it was the first time I saw guys that looked like me that were actively choosing to dress up, right? Like they didn't have a school presentation, right? They weren't in trouble. They weren't going to church. They were just dressing up just 'cause. And these were guys who were SGA presidents, homecoming kings, right? They had their own student orgs going on. And this was a huge, pivotal moment in my life. And I'll never forget the moment because this is when I became in love with this thing called menswear. We were in our dining commons by the name of Landrum, and about 10 or 11 of them all walked in at one time, right? All dressed up. And it was like time stopped. The lunch lady stopped serving chicken. The girls stopped talking at the table. And at that moment, I became fascinated about what caused that response. What caused the room to shift just based on what they were wearing. And it was at that moment that I really got in love with this thing called menswear. So I started diving into it, right? Started doing my research, trying to figure out everything I could about how to get into that space. And that led me to a guy by the name of Jason Gatz. I'll never forget, I'm 18, 19 years old. I go to one of the top luxury retailers in Atlanta. He's literally the only black guy that's working there, right? Right, so as soon as I see him, the first thing I do, 18, 19-year-old, wide-eyed, and say, hey, look, man, I know you don't know me from a can of paint. My name's Joseph Hines, and I'm really interested about getting into the industry. Would you mind mentoring me, right? Would you mind mentoring? Granted, guys, I was afraid. This guy didn't know me, right? Could have went through that rejection, but I said, man, I really want to get into this space. And by God's grace, he said yes. And literally a year from that moment, I went from this to this to this. In this picture, I'm about 19, 20 years old at this point. And see, what started happening is, man, I just started posting, right? Because what I started realizing is, hey, man, look, if I want to get business, I have to start posting what I can do, posting what I can wear. So at that time, I became very, very, very intrigued, right, on how I could continue to brand myself, right? Because what I saw is a lot of guys that were taking pictures, on their cell phone, but I said, you know what, I want to have a photographer, right? I want to do this professionally because all the top people in the space, that's what they're doing. So I just started posting and posting and posting. And something really interesting happened. I got this email, right? As you guys can see, right, we like to keep receipts. Everybody say receipts. This is 2017, right? I'm about 21 at this time. Granted, all I've been posting on my Instagrams are pictures of how I look and what I've been wearing. And I get this really interesting email from Armstrong University asking me if I want to be a keynote speaker. Now, look, I don't know if you guys are like me, but at 21, they asking me to be a keynote speaker. I'm still in school. In my mind, I'm like I don't even have any speaking content on my Instagram. They don't even know if I can speak. But, I collect myself and I ask what any other educated brother in this room would ask. What's the budget? What's the budget? And guys, what they said next blew my mind away. Like, I know some of you guys might be a little bit richer than me, right? But at 21, right, they offered me $1,000 to speak for 45 minutes. At that, I mean, look, I don't know. Maybe it's a little different for you guys, right? But at 21, having no past performance at all on my Instagram about speaking, somehow they were trusting me as a senior still in college to speak to other college students about dressing. And they were going to pay me $1,000 to do it. Right? So at this moment, I started thinking to myself, I'm like, man, what would make them do that? What would make them be so irresponsible? Now, granted, I was nice, right? So I performed. Right? Put me in the game, coach. I was going to do what I needed to do. But I still was amazed about what caused that. And that's when I came up with this term, perception economics. See, the idea is what we don't realize is every single day we have the chance to leverage image into income. We have the chance to leverage image into income. A lot of you guys have heard the idea that perception is reality, right? Right? Well, that's true. Perception is reality. And when I started doing the research on it, right, just figuring out how the brain works, I started figuring out some really interesting things. First thing I figured out is when it comes to first impressions, how much of a first impression is based on what somebody physically sees? Do you guys know? 90, 100? 70%. About 70%. And what makes it even crazy is I started learning how the brain processes things. And what I learned as I was doing this research is the brain processes images 60,000 times faster than it does words. So when you think of why memes are so popular, why emojis are so popular, the reason it is because of what? It's because of what people are physically seeing. So what I started saying to myself is, man, I got to take advantage of this. And to really drive this point home, I want to do a quick exercise with you guys. What sport does this gentleman play here? Basketball. Are you guys sure? Are you? He doesn't play football, right? He doesn't play soccer. All right. $100,000 on the table. You guys are going with basketball. Okay, 100%. What about this guy right here? What sport do you think he plays? Oh, yeah, I said that kind of quick. No, are we talking football or football? Football, okay, just got to make sure. What about this guy right here? What sport does he play? Football, yeah, there we go. Guys, I have a question. You guys haven't seen any film. You've seen no tape. You haven't seen them play in person. But how was it that all of you could agree on what sport they played? They all have one thing in common. What was it? Uniform. So the reality and thing I want you guys to start thinking about today is, what is your uniform saying about you? What sport is it telling people that you play? Because the issue that a lot of us have is, a lot of us, we want to play basketball, but we're going to the basketball game in soccer cleats. We're going to the basketball game in a football helmet and shoulder pads. And we're wondering why people are not associating us with the sport. It doesn't matter about how nice you are, about how good you are. If you aren't able to understand the uniform or the space that you're looking to operate in, nobody's going to think you know how to play the sport. So the question that I really want you guys to start asking yourself is, what is your uniform saying about you? Is it saying that you're a champion? Right? What team does it say you play on? Right? Are we on the Trailblazers? Are we on the Nuggets? What team is your uniform saying that you play on? So guys, look, I know I have a little bit of time, and I wanted to kind of get into the nuts and bolts before we get into the Q&A. So the first thing I did want to do, because I wanted to leave you with something tangible when it comes to suiting. So I wanted to go over the fundamentals. Can everyone say fundamentals? Right? So one of the first things I learned when I first started playing basketball was this thing called the triple threat position. Right? It's really, really interesting because you can either shoot from it, right? You can drive, you can pass, but it's one of the foundational things that you need to learn when it comes to basketball. So I want to do the same thing for you guys, right? I want to go over some quick foundational things when it comes to suits before I get into Q&A. We could talk branding, but I want to leave you here with something tangible. So the first thing I want to talk about today is the shoulder, right? The shoulder is the most important thing on the suit, right? It is the most important thing on the suit because if you mess up the shoulder, everything's done. And really what I want to go into specifically on the shoulder is you always want to make sure that the shoulder is not too tight. Because once the shoulder is too small, right, you can't let it out. You're done. You'd actually rather the shoulder be too big than too small. Because once it's too small, you're done. And one of the hallmarks of the shoulder being too small, as you can see with my man here, is not only do you see that stress that's on the top of the jacket, right? You see those stress lines that's kind of going down the top of his shoulder, but you also will see his deltoid start to stick out. So this even is true whether you're buying an overcoat, right? For my guys who are a little bit more in the streetwear fashion, you're familiar with the YSL Teddy jacket, right? No matter what you want to get, whenever you're buying a coat, the first thing that you always want to look at is the shoulder, right? Second thing, side seams. This is really important. I know we do a lot of different things digitally, right? But when I was coming up, when I used to turn my test in, if I got something wrong, what do you think my teacher would put on it? They put an X, right? So your jacket kind of works the same way. So whenever a jacket is too tight, it's going to be similar to that teacher, right, that you might have had in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. It's going to give you an X on your jacket. And what that looks like real time is these two gentlemen, right, because it's going to do two things. Either number one, like my man Jonah Hill, you're literally going to see a full X, right? The button's like, please unbutton me, right? That's what you don't want. Or number two, what's going to happen is you're actually going to start to see the chest pucker, right? It's not going to lay flat. It's actually going to start puckering up like this. So this is really, really important as you're getting your suit. You want to make sure that it's not too tight, but on the flip side, you also want to make sure that it's not too baggy, right? We also want to make sure it's not too baggy because nobody wants to look like they're going to be able to parachute with their suit, right? Everyone say not a good look. All right. Next thing, just right. My man, this is a guy by the name of Angel Ramos, really, really huge in this space. And I think this is a flawless example of what your suit should look like. Now, here's a quick question. How much you guys think Angel weighs? Angel's 240. The reason I love showing this is because a lot of guys that are bigger are like, man, well, I can't look slim. I can't. Stop trying to get the slim fit and just get what fits. Because if you start understanding basic principles of menswear, it doesn't matter how big you are. If you get what fits from you from a foundational standpoint, you will look just as slim. And as you can see, it definitely has a slimming effect. I mean, Angel's a big guy. He's like 6'1", 6'2", 240. He's big, right? But as you can see in these pictures, you would never guess that. Next thing is sleeve length, guys. This is really, really important. This is really important. So there's two things I see guys generally do wrong when it comes to sleeve length. They either have it too long or they have it too short. So what does too long look like? My man Johnny Depp. As you can see, the sleeve is almost to the middle of the palm, right? It's almost at the middle of the palm. What you really want when you're looking at a sleeve length is you want it to be generally right at the break of the wrist, right? You want it to be right at the break of the wrist, so that way you're showing at least a quarter to a half inch of cuff, okay? Last thing, jacket length. This is really, really important. This is another thing that I see guys mess up a lot. And again, guys, this is the same thing that you could do even if you're buying other jackets outside of just suits, is you need to understand what not to do. Now, everyone remembers these 01 dress suits, right? And everyone's laughing. But do you know why these suits were that long? And I'm going to tell you why. Has anyone heard of the old adage that your suit length should be the same length and you should be able to put your arms to your side and cuff it, and that's where your suit jacket should be? Has anyone heard that before? Well, that only works if you're perfectly proportioned. If you're a guy who either has shorter arms or my guy, you know, like Tracy McGrady or Shaq, where your arms are significantly longer than your height, that's not going to work. So what is it that you now want to look at? There's two things. Number one, you want to look at where the jacket actually falls on the crotch line. So you generally want it to be anywhere between 1 inch to 2 inches past the crotch line. And number two, you also want to make sure that the jacket is covering the seat. That's just a fancy menswear term for butt, okay? We say seat, all right? So those are the two things that you really want to look at when it comes to jacket length. And as you can see, my man Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. And then my man right here, flawless. Now, next we want to get into the pants. Guys, this is going to be fun. Because I see this happen a lot. A lot of guys are like, but man, I want to be slim fit. I want my pants to fit. Well, what I'm really big on is I want your pants to fit but also be functional. So let's see what that looks like, right? First thing, as you can see, my guy on the left, this is standard fit. In the middle, it's a slim fit. And towards the right, as you can see, this is what a lot of guys I see do now. It's kind of this crop style. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. Because not only is it too short, but look how much of his shin that he's now showing, right? Just from a functional standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. Because imagine if he sits down, that pant is going to turn into a short, right? It's no longer a pant. So that's the first thing is you always want to make sure, especially for me if you're a younger guy, I like to always teach you want to have what's called a no break or a slight break. And all that means, right, break is just referring to if there's a break at the end of the trouser. So for me, I like for it to rest right at the end of the shoe. And the reason I like for that is just because it creates a nice, clean line. It's not too short. It's not too long. You can transition it professionally, but you also can transition it casually. So it gives you a lot of great options as a guy depending on how you want to wear the pant. Next, we got what's trendy. Right? This is an example of what's too tight. Now, if you guys ever want to figure out if your pant is too tight, there's two telltale signs that are very, very important to look at. The first is the perma crease that's in the center of the pant. If your perma crease ever starts to disappear in your pant, it's too tight. Easy telltale sign. If it starts to disappear in the pant, it's too tight. Second thing you also want to look at is the stress. I don't know if you guys can see my man's seat back there, but you see all that stress that's in his thigh? Right? It almost looks like, honey, where's my super suit? Right? We don't want that. So again, guys, you can have a slim fit, right? Everyone can look at my trouser, but you also can still have room to be able to wear it to where it's functional. Last couple of things, right? This is really important. Your tie is not a bib. Your tie is not a bib. This is really important. I see a lot of guys that struggle with this. So what do I mean by that? This is the tie length. So the first thing you want to make sure of, you always want to make sure, and I'm going to get into the length, but you want to make sure that you don't have all of this space between the belt line and where the end of your tie is. It interrupts what you're looking at visually, so it creates a less cleaner line. Does that kind of make sense to everyone in the room? So what does that need to look like? Right, here's another example. Guys, this is real life. I see this every day. I've done fittings for thousands of guys. This happens, right? Even at a high level, this happens. So how long should my tie be? Exactly. It should be right where my guy in the middle is, right at the tip of the belt line. Right at the tip of the belt line, right? And here's some other good examples. Now, there is one exception where it can be a little bit longer than the tip of the belt line. I always like to show that there's one exception, and that's if you're 6'7". So my guy right here, his name's Curtis, 6'7". He has a much taller frame, and he also has a high rise trouser. So if you're a taller guy and you have a tie that's a little bit past the belt line, you're still good because your torso is long enough to where visually it's still going to make sense. Cool? And last but not least, don't be a square. Don't be a square. Guys, it's really important. And guys, everything that I'm talking about today, I used to do. So don't think I'm talking down at you. I used to do the same thing, all right? So what do I mean by that? No square toe shoes. Guys, look, I know they have the sale at Dockers. I know they're for a great price, but you do not want to do the square toe shoes. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason you don't want to do this is because nothing's worse than having a very fitted trouser, but then you have a shoe that's not fitted to your foot, right? So when you have a square toe, as you can see, it really does not complement the shape of your foot, right? You have this huge square at the end. So if you're having a whole, if you have a fitted top, fitted pants, and now you end it with this shoe, it ruins the whole aesthetic. So what you really want to do is you really want to focus on trying to find a shoe like to the right that's more fitted to your toe. And of course, you could go wingtip, you can go cap toe, or you could even do a double monk strap. And if you're really feeling it, right, if you're really trying to do something different, you can also go the single monk, all right? So look, guys, I don't want to take too much of the time. I do want to get into the Q&A, but I at least wanted to leave you guys with some tangible things. But I think at this time, let's transition to the Q&A.
I didn't even want to walk up here. I'm like, I know he hates this suit right here. We're going to talk about the fashion in just a moment, but I want to go back to your personal journey because you did something that encapsulates what this whole summit is about, getting comfortable in uncomfortable spaces, right? Getting out of our comfort zones. Speaking wasn't in your comfort zone, yet you leverage your image to build your income. How did you prepare for that speech? Because a lot of us are going to manifest something that is going to grow us outside of where we are. And it couldn't have been easy to grow into a position where you're speaking, talking to these students, talking to these kids, and saying, geez, I got $1,000. I got to kill this. How'd you get ready? How'd you do it?
So I'll be honest with you, man. The speaking thing actually wasn't the issue, right? The speaking thing, I actually was very, very confident because I always knew I could speak. The thing that was really hard for me and was the hardest thing to kind of leave was finding out what I wanted to do after basketball. Because you got to think, for 17 years, I had one identity. Right. So it was terrifying for me to wake up every day and ask myself, what do I want to do, and not have an answer back. Mm-hmm. Imagine, like you ask it, I'm literally waking up every day asking myself, man, what I want to do? No answer. What I want to do? No answer. What I want to do? No answer. And to come from a situation where, man, everything was easy with basketball. I mean, like, even the hard stuff I love. Like, I love working out. I love looking at, my teammates seeing him about to quit because he can't do another suicide. I'm like, I got him. Like, I love that. But having to transition now into not knowing what else I'm going to love or even if I'm going to get that back, that really was what was uncomfortable for me. And it took me, I think, doing two things. Number one, continuing to ask why, because I think as men, we're afraid to ask those tough questions, especially if we don't know the answer. So we distract ourselves with other things. It might be women, it might be drinking, it might be partying. And then the second thing was detaching my gift from the vehicle. And what I mean by that is, let's take Michael Jordan, for example. Okay. If Michael Jordan was born in 1000 BC, would he be playing basketball? No. So is basketball really his gift? What I would argue Michael Jordan's gift is its competitive nature. And basketball simply houses his gift. See, what happens a lot of times, we become so attached to the vehicle that when the vehicle dies, we die. And we aren't able to reinvent ourselves. Not realizing that the vehicle just housed it, and we always can change vehicles. So for me, I had to figure out, like, okay, What is my real gift? And what I started realizing is, okay, my gift is communication, and there's multiple different vehicles that can house it. I can house it in speaking, I can house it in marketing, I can house it in clothing. Like there's multiple vehicles that can deploy that gift. And that was the thing that really helped me kind of get out that uncomfortable position of like not knowing what I wanted to do.
Love it, love it. Can we give a round of applause for that response? I thought I was about to talk about clothing, but I got more questions just about you. We're gonna get back to the practicality of the clothing.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about this perception economics aspect of it because you rethought about identity, role, and purpose. I also want to know, when you realize this is what you're supposed to do, when you start to see these blessings come your way, how'd you turn that into procuring $1 million clients? Because not everybody in your space is able to have a Will Packer sitting there.
So here's the thing. What you say no to says a lot more about you than what you say yes to. And here's what I mean by that. There were so many times where I turned down brand deals because it didn't align with the type of client I wanted. So for example, there was times where an Express hit me up, or an H&M hit me up, or a Men's Warehouse hit me up. And I said, I don't want to do that. It doesn't align with my brand. There were so many times where I knew I could have went viral quicker if I would have did a cell phone video versus actually having a professional videographer, because Instagram actually rewards more natural looking content than it does curated content. But I knew that the follower, even if I went viral, the type of followers I was going to get was not the type of followers that could actually afford the price point and my product of what I was looking to sell. So for me, it took me being willing to starve for 10 years, right? Until finally in the span of 3-4 months, it was funny. I always tell people this story, this is maybe a year ago. Shout out to my videographer for Timmy. But I gained about 80,000 followers in 3 months. So I went from 20,000 to 100,000 followers in 3 months. And everyone's like, man, you grew so fast, man. You grew so fast. Now realizing I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been posting for 10 years.
Come on.
So now once all these people see the content, they're like, oh, he's been doing this. Oh, he's been had this level of content. Oh, okay, he's been professional. So that's now how I get a Will Packer. How I can get all these different type of
quality followers.
Yeah, it was quality. And that's what I say. It's not about, it's really not about the vanity of the number, right? It's about the quality of who is actually following you and are they willing to pay you? Because again, I could have a lot of followers, but how many people are going to be willing to spend $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 at a time on clothing? Yes. Right? Not a lot. So for me, I think that was the biggest thing, is just staying patient, continuing to post curated content, and continuing to tell a story to the type of clientele that I also wanted to attract.
What are some items that every man should have? Let's talk about the basics, right? Some of us aren't in a position where we can buy multicolored suits.
Yeah.
We've got to get a brown, or what, a black, a gray, a navy. What should we have?
First suit is navy, by far. And what I actually would say is, what I would do if I was a guy is I would actually do a navy suit that is that has a soft shoulder and a patch pocket. And all I mean by that is the reason you want to do that style of suit is because it allows you also to transition it casually. Because now what you could do is you can wear that jacket as a sports coat, throw it on with some denim. You also can wear the full suit, do it with sneakers if you wanted to, or transition it formally, right, for a job interview. It just gives you way more versatility. And specifically, I would recommend trying to get some type of what I call dry fabric, right? Because there's two different types of fabrics in suiting. There's what we call a wet fabric and a dry fabric. A wet fabric has a sheen to it. Right, that's generally when you see it literally looks wet, right? It looks very, very formal. Where a dry fabric tends to have some texture. Think about denim, right? Denim has texture to it. So a dry fabric suit's gonna be like a hop sack. It's gonna be something, it might even sometimes even be a blend, but the reason you wanna do that is because that style of suit now allows for you to not only transition it formally, but you also can transition it casually. And from a context perspective, because culturally we are going more casual, you want to also buy a suit that fits with the times while still allowing for you to be dressed up and dressed formally. Does that kind of make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Makes a lot of sense. I'm going to go straight into these questions. Very good practical questions we have here. This is actually the next one on my list as well. Your advice for dressing on a budget. You already answered the second part, which is what should be prioritized. But what is your advice for dressing on a budget? If we have to go to some of those places that you named that aren't the clientele that you're looking for, but you see somebody, you might see the suit and you're like, you know what? I know what you got on, but I like how you're wearing it and you still made it work. How do we do that?
I think, first of all, I think the number one thing that you need to do when it comes to dressing on a budget, before you even try to dress on a budget, is expose yourself to the budget you don't have. And what I mean by that is if you go to a Ralph Lauren and you look at the Purple Label campaign, or if you go to a Tom Ford and you look at the Tom Ford campaign, or if you go to a Cucinelli and you look at the Cucinelli campaign, or if you go to Isaia and look at the Isaia campaign, what it's doing is it's raising your taste level. So when you're able to raise your taste level high enough, now when you go back to the Zaras, when you go back to the H&Ms, when you go back to the Men's Warehouse, your taste level is high enough to where now you can duplicate that look. But if you never develop the taste level, it don't matter if you shop on a budget because your budget is still going to be reflective of your taste level. So even if you buy a $100 suit, you can't make it look like $1,000 because you haven't raised your taste level. So for me, it's all about showing guys at the highest level, what does this look like? Now we work backwards, and then we can work forwards.
What about shopping for a chubby dude?
So again, I think that's the same thing. I think guys who have a little bit more weight on them,
Not me.
you have to lose the ego. In all seriousness, you have to lose the ego. I mean, I can't tell you how many times when I was working retail, guys come in there and I'd be like, yeah, you're about a 40, right? No, I'm a 34 in the waist. Brother, come on now. So that's the first thing, lose the ego. And two, do not be connected to the word slim. We've got to stop doing that, because what happens is a bigger guy will be like, well, I want a slim fit. I want to be slim. That's the worst type of fit for you. You're already filling out the fabric, so you don't want to do a slim fit. You actually want to do a regular fit. And it will look slim on you because you're already filling out that fabric. So I think those are the two things. Is like, as a man, you have to be real with yourself. You have to drop the ego. And then number two, don't be connected to the word slim. Be connected to the fit.
Love it. Let's get into accessories. Do you always wear a pocket square? And if so, how do you arrange it?
95% of the time I wear a pocket square. There are certain situations where I don't, and generally if I'm not wearing a pocket square, it's because I feel like everything else I'm having is so loud that I don't want to force it. But generally, there's generally two folds. Yeah, there's generally only about two folds that I do when I'm wearing a pocket square. The first one is going to be called the TV fold, right? It's popularized by JFK because he was one of the first presidents on TV to actually wear a pocket square, right? That's essentially that straight across fold that you guys will see. Very simple, very clean.
Heard it called the presidential fold sometimes too.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second fold is kind of what I'm doing now, which is what I call kind of the flower fold, right? Where it almost kind of looks like a bouquet. And generally, I like to do this with pocket squares that have some type of trim on the edge, right? Because it's a very simple way to add a little bit more flair to your look without doing too much, right? Like I just have a simple white, but it has a black trim. So it's able to play into my accessories without over-seasoning the food. Because that's what I think happens sometimes. Sometimes people try to over-season the fit, and then, it turns out a little too tangy. Sometimes you got to know when not put anything extra on it, just take it out the oven.
Right. What about the pocket squares where it's like a peak pocket square? You got like 3 triangles or different shapes like that. How do you feel about those?
No. I wouldn't. And the reason, here's the reason I say that, right? There's two reasons. Number one,
colorful pastor suit pocket square.
Well, that, and it reminds you of like a set, right? Like if you go to like JCPenney's, you see like the shirt, tie pocket square set, right? Again, and this is why it's so important to raise your taste level and why I like for guys to start at the highest level. There's a reason when you go to Tom Ford, they don't do that. There's a reason when you go to Cucinelli, they don't do that. It's a reason when you go to Ralph Lauren, not the one in Macy's, but the luxury Ralph Lauren because there's two different Ralph Laurens, right? Ralph Lauren's smart because you have Ralph Lauren that you get to see Macy's, Marshalls, but then there's the actual Ralph Lauren where you're able to see like Black Label, Polo Country, etc. When you go into that store, like you're not seeing that, and it's a reason. It's because from a taste level perspective, it's just not the best thing to do.
Now, how would you dress Pongo? What would you? Here, it's the dark skin
we're
brother
gonna leave
over
Pongo
here.
out of it.
Yeah. No, I just want to see. That's a nice outfit there because he's from another country. So.
Yeah. How would you?
Yeah. And that's now. How would you? What mistakes did he make?
Yes.
Now, me personally,
Let's go.
So there's two things I think that's really important.
So you admit he made some mistakes. That's
No, not at all, not at all. Number one, clothing is consultative for me, right? It's like when you go to the doctor. You don't go to the doctor and he automatically prescribes you medicine. What does he do first? Right? So the first thing I'd have to ask is, okay, well, like, do you have an event coming up? What do you do for a living? What are the spaces that you operate in? Are the people that you're speaking to, are they younger, are they older? What's the demographic? Are they white, black, in between? Is it mixed? I have to understand the context, because that's another thing, right? Clothing is just as much context as it is content, because you can do the right thing at the wrong time.
There's a phrase that you say, content is king, context is God.
Yep, exactly. Because I'll give you an example, right? If I'm going, I don't know, to a casual outing, but I'm wearing a full tuxedo, yeah, it looks nice, but it doesn't make sense. Like if I'm in a tuxedo at a house party, you know, it's kind of like overkill. It's like you're using a bazooka to kill a rabbit, right? Like there's nothing left. So I think context is very important. So I would have to figure that out. And in terms of what you're doing today, I'm not mad at this, right? Because again, I spoke with you a little bit before. I know you're coming from MTV hosting, so obviously that's a younger demographic, right? You have a certain crowd. It needs to be on brand and appeal to that crowd. Obviously, the flared look is something that's in and is something that is in trend right now. So from a context perspective, I don't think he's doing anything wrong because it makes sense for what he does.
I didn't think he did nothing wrong with it. I just saw I saw the bell bottom pants, and I just wanted to know yours is narrow, and he came in flying. You know, okay. That's enough about him.
It's interesting too. I work with several different stylists, and the best question that they've ever asked me is, "What are you trying to communicate and why?" And so when I'm still building my brand, right? I hosted the VMAs the other day, but everybody was paying attention to Saweetie messing up on the teleprompter. Some people didn't realize the fly guy standing next to it that was doing excellent at his job, right? So I try to. So I've been going in the place of not wearing non-conventional suits lately, right? I know in this context, if I was going to a different kind of business conference while I wasn't back at the crib, this is not the right thing to wear to be taken seriously in certain circles, a finance conference, etc. But if I'm walking around and people are like, that guy looks vaguely familiar, what is this sash? What is he? Even if you don't like it, he does something creative. He got these weird chains and brooches, and even if it's too tangy, he must do something to make him think that he should wear that. And so you bring up an interesting thing, going back to this question that someone else has, and we talked about this morning. A lot of people come from the mindset of, well, the white billionaires wear the simplest of clothes.
Oh, I can't wait to get into this.
I don't even need to finish the question. We only got a few minutes, so you already know where I'm going.
So let me get in my bag on this really quick. Is that okay with you guys?
No, go ahead.
So first thing, most people don't even understand what's going on when these billionaires are wearing what they're wearing.
Thank you.
So the first thing, right? When you see a T-shirt, you're thinking this is a regular T-shirt. No, that's a Pima cotton from Brunello Cucinelli. That's like $900, right? Oh, he's just wearing, you know, regular denim. No, that's from Seven of Mankind. That denim is like $800, right? Oh, that's just a regular sneaker. No, that sneaker's from Tom or Cucinelli. It just doesn't have any brand labels on it, right? Because the thing about luxury is meant to be understood by those who understand. So that's the first side to it, right? The second side to it, which I hate when people do, is most of the examples of the most grossly underdressed people are from people in the tech industry. And the same thing that makes them good at tech is the same thing that makes them bad at dressing. They've never been people. Like people, like they don't go around people. They work remote. They've never dressed well. So you're viewing it as it's a choice where that's just a skill deficiency. Because if you, like, people don't understand. Look at oil billionaires. How are they dressing? Energy billionaires. How are they dressing? Finance like, people just like to focus on tech because it's the newest thing. There's so many other industries where people do not dress like that. Who do you think Tom Ford's selling a $10,000 Python jacket to? You know what I mean? Obviously, it's a clientele, but it's like people aren't seeing that. And, you know, they like to, put these Mark Zuckerberg's examples. It's like, bro, that's just one industry. There's so many more industries where people dress well, but don't use the tech guy because he's never gone out anyway. He's never worried about drip. He's worried about code. Right. Like, he don't even have to go outside. He's working literally on his computer. So I think people have got to stop kind of using that as a crutch, because I think a lot of men as well use this as an excuse to not do it. And that also leads into the conversation of the difference between performance and perception. Because what I've seen a lot of times is that there's two sides of the coin. There's a performance side where they look down on the people with perception because they say, man, look, these guys don't do no work. They're not getting none done. They just want to look good. And then there's a perception side that's looking at the performance people and like, man, these guys just hating because they can't dress well. But here's the reality. What happens when you do both? What happens when you do both? See, that's when you become a Diddy. That's when you become a Drake. That's when you become a Beyonce, right? Jill Scott is dope. Let me tell you, amazing talent. Can sing her butt off. But it's a reason her brand isn't at the level of Beyonce, right? It's because there's something powerful when there's congruency between your performance and your perception. As men, we have to drop the ego because, again, a lot of guys would be like, well, Joe, I'm dropping 30 a night, right? I got $1 million. How you telling me I ain't nice? Look, I know you're nice. I know you're dropping 30 a night, but the reality is, and here's the real question, you're doing 30 a night, but you're having to do it on 25 shots. What if you're able to do it on 10? So do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? And that's a conversation I think we have to have.
Is it true that I have time for 3 more questions? Is that what you're letting me know? Oh, I got 1 minute. Okay, 60 seconds.
3 questions.
Man, phenomenal questions. Let me see the best one. Here we go. The new office fashion seems to have shifted from traditional suits to business casual. What advice do you have to remain fashionable even within this change?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think that there's 2 things. And the first thing is I love playing with what's called jersey knit fabrics. I think that it's great for office wear because not only does it allow for you to be comfortable, but allows for you to still be dressed up by not sacrificing the comfort. So if I was a guy in the office, what I would try to find is some type of jersey knit sports coat, some type of jersey knit, maybe even a jogger. Right? I don't know if you guys have ever seen, but there's this thing called dress joggers. I think those are perfect for the office because even if you're a guy who wants to wear a full suit, if you do a dress jogger, it still makes the overall outfit casual because it's like it's a jogger. And you can transition it with sneakers. So if you're a guy who's looking to kind of play the fence and be comfortable but also stylish, if you do that, I think that's a perfect, easy medium for being the guy who's known as dressed up at the office while also not coming across as pretentious.
2 questions. We're going to make these rapid fire answers 15 seconds. Someone asked, what is the price of the suit you have on right now? How much would you charge for it?
For this, $1,200.
$1,200?
So that's what $1,200 looks like. Yeah. And the last one, which was my favorite question to ask folks on this panel as I book in these conversations, what's one book you recommend we all read?
Oh, man. For men, I would start The Way of the Spearman. The Way of the Spearman.
By David Dita.
By David Dita. Amazing book. If you're going business, I would do $100 Million Offer or $100 Million Leads by Alex Hormozi. So those would be kind of my 2 or 3 that I would recommend.
Can we give a big round of applause?
Show him some love, y'all. Show him some love.
Yes.
That boy is sharp. Boy sharp.
Once again, my name is Monty Pongo. It has been a pleasure being with you all today. Thank you.
Coming up next.